Now, African financial group's BayHill Capital will list the BayHill Transformational Investment Portfolio on the JSE on the 24th of April this year. Geoff Blount, the Managing Director, BayHill Capital, and Dr. Gil Mahlati, founder of African Financial Group, are in the studio with me to discuss this. Let me begin with you, Dr. Mahlati, and ask about the rationale of listing the portfolio now.
First of all, I would like to correct you. We're not listing on the JSE.
Oh.
We are listing on ZARX.
Okay, I'm looking at my producer, and I am saying after this, we're going to deal with this. Listing on ZARX.
What we're actually doing, we're trying to create, in fact, we are creating liquidity for investments, particularly black economic empowerment investments that have been done over the last 20 years.
Right.
And some of them go to about 500 billion. And most of the companies listed on the JSE have got such. The problem is that most of these people, if I may say, or schemes, is a single share, which you have to hold for 10 years.
Right.
And therefore, you have all the risks of being locked in, number one. Number two, you have only one share.
Sure.
So this transformation investment portfolio will be able to, as it were, pool all those shares through a swap mechanism. That will make you diversify from the share you are in.
Yeah.
Secondly, it will give you some tradability and liquidity,
right,
which therefore, of course, decrease your risk. You know, if I could give you an example, Sasol at some stage was at 600 rand per share, but you couldn't get out of Inzalo.
Absolutely.
And you know what happened. Inzalo was out of the money when the time came.
Absolutely.
So this obviously will help that. And secondly, it will take care of this once empowered, always empowered argument, because people can come in and out, and our transformational investment portfolio would always be there. If you have done one transaction, we will always keep the share until such time that it matures.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back and try to understand that a little more, but I wanted to know in terms of size, how big a splash are you making with this?
Well, our minimum is that we are listing is just 100 million.
100 million rand.
Which we have some commitments for. But the sky is the limit as to the size of the portfolio.
Absolutely. I'll come back and we'll discuss how big that dream can be. Geoff, you are coming in and managing this now. So tell me, in terms of your listing on ZARX, oh, by the way, why ZARX versus the JSE? Sorry.
It's a very good question. There's a number of technical reasons why we think ZARX answers, this gives us the solutions that we need in our listing. The first one is that we always needed to make sure that TIP is a black-owned and controlled listed company, but we wanted to have free trade in the share on the market, but not say no to any investors. If people have got capital and they want to come and invest in it, we'd like their capital. But what the ZARX operating environment allows us to do is actually list an entity and ensure that it's always going to be at least 56% or more black-owned and controlled, and the directors have the ability to set that limit. The other particular about ZARX, which is useful for us, is the ability for us to engage in market making the share to keep the share price around its net asset value. Because if you're bringing in, as Dr. Gill said, if you're bringing in investors in that have shares in BE schemes, and we swap them in and give them shares in TIP on the market, you need to have a value that underpins that. So the net asset value underpins that. So those are the two main reasons for
Absolutely.
ZARX.
Explain for me and for the benefit of our viewers at home as well, who you're targeting here and how you will achieve it.
So once TIP is listed, our hope is that we would then create a broad-based retail strategy that allows investors from all walks of life to come in and invest in. So one of the problems right now...
Joe in the street.
One of the problems you find with a lot of the BE schemes at the moment, this 500 billion rand that Dr. Gill referred to, is that you either typically have to be wealthy or connected to be invited to join the club, as it were. That's not the case for all schemes, but it is the case for most of them.
That's what I was going to say,
and this ability for us to be able to swap investors that are in schemes into TIP shares, but at the same time then go to the man in the street and raise money and capital from the man in the street, creates proximity. And so, whether you're wealthy or poor, you can actually access and buy shares in TIP. And in fact, one of the advantages of the ZARX platform is that it has a no minimum transaction charge, but a guided 1.5% stockbroking
Right.
charge. So if you come and buy 100 rands worth of shares in TIP, you'll spend R1.50 on your transaction charge.
Right.
On the other stock exchanges, the JSE, for example, obviously there's a higher minimum transaction, often in the vicinity of 100 rand or so.
Yeah. I'm sure you've got targets.
Yes, no.
Share with us, please.
Look, our initial targets that we're looking to build relationships with is a portfolio of blue chip companies,
Right.
so larger quality JSE companies, and engaging with the BE schemes that are investors in those companies
Right.
to create the swaps. But once you've got that facility in place, you obviously it's a willing
Explain
buyer,
the
willing
swaps,
seller.
because for a lot of people that will just fly right over the top of their head.
Okay. The swap really is that, let's just say you've got 100,000 rands worth of shares in a BE scheme,
Yeah.
and you're locked in for the next 5 years. What we would do is we would give you 100,000 rands worth of shares in TIP,
Right.
bring that asset onto our balance sheet, and so now what happens is that TIP now invests into the underlying scheme or company to the value of 100,000 rand.
Right.
But the investor that swapped to us now owns 100,000 rands worth of TIP shares, which they can trade on the market, so they have liquidity and price discovery.
Right.
But to our mind, much more importantly, is you now have a diversified portfolio
Sure.
of shares in TIP as opposed to the one horse in the race.
Absolutely. I'm going to come to you and ask you about what you're trying to do on the education front, because I imagine you're going to have to educate quite a bit here to get people to participate. Dr. Mahlati, if I can come to you and ask about how you're going to answer the issue of once empowered, always empowered. I mean, it's a controversial issue. I think, where do I stand? I stand on the side that says you should be empowered forever, but maybe I'm in the minority. How will you solve it?
Well then, I mean, if you, let's say, you did a deal with a JSE listed entity, and after 10 years you want to, it matures,
Yeah.
you want to take your money,
Yes.
and yet the charter says that company must continue being listed
At
being empowered
at that level.
at that level.
Yeah.
And now the company has to look for other
Investors to replace
to
those
come
that
to
are
replace those.
exiting.
And of course, then that creates a problem of what we call the revolving door of empowerment, where you have to get this guy in, and the next time is another guy in, and sometimes it has got unintended consequences, because it then talks about who's politically connected, who's not politically connected in terms of this revolving door.
Yeah.
It tends to come with the elections and so on. So if you have this, you have a TIP, a Transformation Investment Portfolio.
Yeah.
When the time is right, the investor can then swap his shares
Right.
into TIP, and the company will continue having a BE investor, which is TIP.
Right.
And therefore, the always empowered principle remains.
So TIP remains transformed.
TIP remains transformed, the company remains transformed. The company doesn't have to look for another empowerment partner.
Yeah.
TIP will remain there,
Yeah.
because the people will change through TIP
Yeah.
in terms of who holds
Yeah.
the shares, but the shares will continue being held by a BE entity.
Yeah. What was your motivation in doing this? Was it just about business?
Well, I'm a surgeon by training. I joined business 20 years ago, and transformation was what was driving me to join business. Transformation in the healthcare sector specifically.
Right.
But the lack of capital drove me to financial services. And it is transformation that has made me do this, or being involved in this. And secondly, it is broadening the, if you want, the pie or the cake,
Right.
or the wealth in terms of the people of South Africa. There are other complicated things that we're going to do with TIP,
Right.
but this one is the simplest.
Absolutely. I want to know what those complicated was if we're trying to get our heads around this one. Geoff, as I said, you're going to have to do a lot of education, because the people that you are looking at, you're looking individuals from here. It says financial planners, investors in existing BE schemes, community groups, syndicates, stock fellows, blah, 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 blah. It says, why does the Amazon? How are you going to do it? How big is your budget?
Look, it's amazing what you can do with technology.
Yeah.
And if you look at the way the Kenyan market operates,
Yeah.
I mean, the Kenyan government now issues bonds into the domestic market via cell phones and app technology. So what we're actually doing is we're going to harness the power of fintech to really allow investors to come and trade via their phone, even if it's via their normal stockbroker, as well as then follow rights issues or raise more capital, education through fintech. We've also created a very simple platform that it's actually incredibly easy to understand and become an investor. So what we've tried to do is bridge the gap, I suppose, between the 120-page normal document you sign when you become an investor in a BE scheme through to let me actually just buy some shares in this entity. And then clearly there's investor education behind that. And it would obviously be customized to the target groups that you're looking at, whether, via stockbrokers, that's a different discussion, versus
or
asset managers versus stokvels, which, and there you would partner again with fintech companies that work in the stokvel market through to community groups. So you've got to tailor the message. But at the end of the day, you've got this 500 billion rand of investors that's got some asset way out in the future. It might be worth something.
Absolutely.
Let's help them realize it now, actually securitize it now.
You need everybody's good wishes. Thanks very much indeed for joining us in the studio today. That's Geoff Blount, Managing Director, BayHill Capital, and Dr. Gil Mahlati, founder of African Financial Group.